have a lot of feelings about it. They're not really great feelings. Good morning everyone, I'm Annie, or really I should be saying good evening considering it is 7:30 at night and I should be writing, and yet here I am. So I see so many videos all over YouTube of people annotating their books, and I tried doing it once and it didn't work very well. I was doing it for a very specific project and I just kind of stopped reading because I was rereading, and that's a big explanation we don't need to get into right now. But I thought it would be fun to see if I can make myself into that annotator girl. So I picked this delightful little thing up today. I read the first one, I loved the first one, I thought it was great and I really enjoyed it, and so I had to pick up the second one of these. So I have some annotating supplies. I've watched a ton of annotating videos on YouTube, seeing what other people do, but I really want to see if this is something that I can get into. Now, let's be real for a minute here. The thought of writing in my books is still a little bit weird to me. This is still something that I'm just like, I don't know if I can really commit to this. And I know I've done it before, like I used to do it in school all the time, but then that was more because I was getting told to, and that was far too many years ago. Let's not count how many years ago that was now. I want to give it a go. I want to be that annotating girl. It's such a vibe and I feel like I'm missing out. So I want to see like what it's all about. Does this help me? Do I feel like this is constructive? I find sometimes that when I'm reading, I kind of sit there and I have all these thoughts and I'm like, I feel like I need to write this down, or like, oh my God, I'll save that quote and I'll like put it in my bullet journal, for example, and I'll make that into a spread. And you know what I never do? I never save it and I never put it into my bullet journal. And I want to do that. And I wonder, is this going to help me be able to remember these quotes? Is this going to help me feel like I'm actually doing something constructive when I'm reading? Although obviously we know reading is constructive, it's good for you. I feel like this might give me more to my reading than just sitting there on my sofa or in my bed or just about anywhere. And I wonder if this will change my life. And that is my question. Just got out of the shower, so I'm looking a little bit like a mess, but I did just want to check in with how I'm doing with reading terms and conditions. Now, this was a book I knew I was going to enjoy, so I wasn't necessarily worried about that, and I'm not checking in about the story because I've only reached chapter 3, but this is taking me a while, and it's not because of reading the story. I don't think that the annotating is making me not want to read it. I just think that normally I would kind of sit down at like any moment, or I'd like stand in the kitchen while I'm cooking dinner and I'd like go through a few pages, and I feel like I'm not doing that. I feel like when I go to read it, I'm like, oh wait, but I've got to annotate it, which means I have to sit somewhere where I can like have my supplies out, and I'm just a bit more conscious of when and where I'm reading it. And so progress is really slow. Like I'm about to start chapter 3 and it's been a week and a bit. It's really slowing me down, but I don't think that it's like making me stale towards reading the book at all, which is always good news. I mean, it's December at the moment, so in a month where I know I'm not going to get a lot of reading done because Christmas and events and all of that lovely stuff. At this moment in time, at 2 chapters in, don't know how I feel about this yet. Okay, so I know I'm away for Christmas holiday, but I had to do a check-in on this. I'm so glad that Ghost is here with me. You are so noisy. I had to do a check-in on this book. Oh my goodness gracious me. This book, I knew I was gonna love it anyway. That was not even a question. I really adored the first, and oh my gosh, I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm coming into a bit of a fake relationship era. I'm living, breathing, dying for a lot of books that have the fake relationship trope in them, but there's so much more to it. I feel like there's also like a little bit Grumpy Sunshine, a little bit of kind of like self-inflicted forbidden romance in it as well, and all of it just like comes together so beautifully. So I'm in to about chapter 10. I've just finished chapter 10, but I wanted to just do a bit of a check-in about the annotating situation. Obviously, I've highlighted a fair bit and I've tabbed quite a lot. I'm tabbing, I think, like there's at least one thing per page that I'm tabbing. Part of me is like, I don't know if I'm doing way too much, because I think I see books online and there's like There's a couple of tabs in it, but it's not like this is going to be a really chunky book by the end of this, right? And part of me kind of loves the way this looks. I think it makes it look like a really loved book, and I think it makes it look like, I mean, I am obsessed with it anyway, but it really looks like I am. But at the same time, I'm really concerned I'm gonna run out of tabs. I think I'm gonna have to order some more. I started with like all brand new tabs. I'm definitely not gonna have enough because I'm doing like at least 1 tab per page. So I'm convinced I'm gonna have to buy some more. But I think once I'm done, I think this is gonna look really nice. I don't actually know how I feel about it, okay? And that's kind of where I am at the moment. Part of me kind of loves it, again, because the way it looks like it's really well loved. I don't know how many more times I can say that and not sound like a broken record. I kind of like it for that reason. The reason that I don't like it is because I'm very slow. I feel like this really slows me down. Yes, it makes me more purposeful in the way that I'm reading, and I'm really reading every individual word and I'm really soaking it in. I kind of just want to like devour this book in a weekend and live, breathe and die for it in a weekend. And I'm not really getting that because I feel like I am being so purposeful in the way I read. Like normally I'd be like, yeah, flick, 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 flick. Oh, look, I'm done with the book. Line by line by line. And like, it's great because I'm obviously really taking it in. And I feel like for very like chunky fantasy books, that could be really, really useful. So like really deep dive into it. I don't know if it's maybe the type of book that I'm reading, the fact that I really like reading romances so quickly that I'm just not getting the same reading experience. I know a lot of people do tab romances and stuff. I feel like there's also not a lot to tab. I'm a little bit worried that I'm kind of going a bit overboard with it and I'm highlighting like everything. But at the same time, as I'm going through it, because I'm quite an emotional reader, I feel like I kind of need to highlight that much. So I think it's just kind of a bit of a process. Obviously, this is the first one I've really done this with, so it's all learning. So I'm going to keep going. I will do another check-in at some point. I don't quite know when. Alrighty then, guys. I have finished Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher, and I adore this book. Just straight up, I adore this book. Oh my god, I cried. It gave me so many feels. That's not really the point of this video, as we know. The point of this video is all of these tabs. There is a lot of these tabs, so let's talk about it because I've got a lot to talk about. Obviously, like I said, I loved this book. I loved the first one. I loved the fine print. I cannot wait for the last one to come out. And this was a really great book. I love Iris and Declan. I think they're so adorable. I love the development of their story. All in all, this was a 5-star read for me. But that, like I said, is not the point of this video. I kind of knew I was going to love this anyway, which is why I spent the time doing all of these tabs. As we can see, there are a lot of tabs. There are a lot. And now that I've done it, I feel like, yes, maybe I did kind of go a little bit overboard with the tabs, but I kind of felt like I needed to put all these tabs in, and I'm sure that like some of you who annotate really frequently are like, oh my god, what have you done to that poor book? Honestly, I felt a little bit bad beginning this off. It felt really strange to highlight. Putting the tabs in wasn't so bad because like I know I can take them out and they're not going to damage the pages, but it's all of the highlighting that went along with this because I was highlighting as well as tabbing. All in all, I'm not convinced on annotating. I have a lot of feelings about it. They're not really great feelings. It's kind of a lot. I feel like it really slowed me down. That's probably because I did so many tabs, and I feel like maybe if I didn't do quite as many, my reading progress probably wouldn't have been quite so slow. I think it's really hard when you're beginning something like this and you kind of don't really know what you're doing. You know, I used orange for foreshadowing, which obviously in the first section of the book there's a lot of orange because we're setting up the story, we're setting up where we're going to be going. And when you've read a few romances, you kind of know the formula for them. You know that when they say certain things, you're like, that's going to come back and bite you in the butt later. Or like, that's going to turn out to be a lie later. Or your opinion on that's going to change later. Like, you kind of get the formula for these things after a while. So there was a lot of things where I was like, tab that. That's coming back. That's going to make an appearance again. So there was a lot of orange towards the first part of the book, and then as we got sort of further towards the end, I started using the orange as like the resolutions. So as things were starting to wrap back up and going in the way that I'd expected them to go, or even if they didn't, it was just the resolution to something that I tabbed earlier, I was tabbing that as well. So it kind of became foreshadowing and resolution, which is why there was still quite a lot of it all the way through the book. Obviously, pink was for love, and romance and like cute little bits and pieces, or like where they'd say something and I was like, you're gonna love that about her later, or like, oh, that's so sweet, or like when I cried. So all of that was tabbed in pink, and then blue was for just quotes and bits and pieces that I liked, or things that I just was like, I don't really know what this falls into, like I think it's important, or I just really like the words used, or basically anything else was blue. And then green, which half of these tabs definitely look yellow, not green, because I ran out of tabs. I'll come to that in a minute. Green was initially for world building, but because this is the second in a series, there wasn't quite as much of that because we'd kind of already done a lot of that in book one. So green ended up being like character development and bits and pieces of characteristics that we learned throughout the book and how opinions changed and whatnot. So that was green. So those were the 4 colours that I used. Now, with the amount of tabbing I did, it's no surprise I ran out of tabs. I started off with my colours, and then, where are we? I think it was about page 150-ish that I had to start shifting to different tabs because I didn't have enough of the first kind of tabs, and I had some others that were pretty similar on hand, so I was like, it's fine, I'll just move to those. Then I ran out of those at about page 400, so I had to shift back to the original style of tabs in different colours. It's realistically a bit of a mess. They do stick out quite far, and I don't know if I love that, but at the same time, I was also trying to be quick, so I didn't want to like spend forever lining it up perfectly, so I just kind of threw them in. And I feel like maybe if I wasn't doing quite so many tabs, I probably would have spent the time, and I think that maybe that's the way to do it, is to not tab every single cute thing, every single foreshadowing, every single piece of character development. Like, that's probably the absolute worst thing I could do. I don't necessarily know if a romance was quite the book to go so in depth with the tabbing. You know, a big chunky fantasy book that's like the first in the series, and like, you know, this is going to be like a long series, and you know there's going to be like a lot of stuff that you've got to like keep track of and is going to come back. Like, I feel like that would be really useful to go super in depth with the tabbing. It was definitely an experience. I feel like I learned a lot about the way that I read. I definitely realised that I like to read at basically any given opportunity. Like, I will be cooking dinner and I will have a book next to me reading. This really stopped me from doing that. I had to be like really mindful of where I was reading and when and whatnot, because it wasn't just a case of, oh, I'll just pick it up for 5 minutes, or like we're in the car and like Nate's driving and, oh, I'll just read a couple of chapters while we're on the way. I couldn't do that, and that really slowed down my progress. And I read quite quickly, so I don't necessarily read every single word. I do kind of skim a lot of bits and pieces. And again, I couldn't do that because I was like, what if something needs tabbing? Like, what if there's a bit of character development? I need to read it. So it definitely slowed me down, which in some ways could be seen as good. Without tabbing, I'd have been done with this in a week easy, whilst, you know, still doing regular life. This took me, gosh, well over a month and a half to get through it. And again, like, it wasn't any fault of the stories. I really loved the story. I love everything about this book. It's just the tabbing really slowed me down, and that's, I think, the biggest thing that I don't like. All in all, story, 100%, 5 stars. Absolutely love it. What an amazing book. I cannot wait for the 3rd one. The tabbing, oh, I don't know. I'm still a little bit on the fence. I kind of want to try a different system of tabbing and like just doing super duper important stuff and not going quite so in depth, because I think with the foreshadowing and with the character development, like, I really treated it like a fantasy, like just like a pure fantasy, where I was like everything is going to be super important, it's going to come back in like 3 books time, but like, it's not, because this is the only book about these about their relationship, really. I feel like I kind of went a little bit overboard, which I think is pretty obvious from the state of this. So I do want to try it again with a different book. I think I'm going to try it with a fantasy, probably even a fantasy series. I feel like that kind of would make more sense for me, and then I'm going to reduce the amount of tabbing that I do and just make it really, really important. I don't necessarily think tabbing is a no, not a straight no anyway. I feel like I need to try it a little bit more. There will be a part 2 to this video. Don't ask me when, because I don't know. I need to find a good book to go through and tab and try this again slightly differently. But this was definitely an experience, and I feel like it could lead to something great. It really could lead to something great, like their beautiful relationship. But that is my thoughts on annotating at this moment in time. This level of annotating is a no. Don't do this. Don't put yourself through this. But I'm going to change the way I annotate. I'm going to give it another go. So, on that note, like and subscribe. I will see you guys next time. Bye.